Good morning. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside. Our opening hymn this morning is "We Are Gathered" by Amanda Udis Kessler, video by Jane Clayball. The lyrics will be projected on the screen. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, and stand in body or spirit and join us in singing the hymn, "We Are Gathered."
We are gathered in the Spirit, our bodies are all part, filled with joy and touched with wonder, separate hands but mingled hearts, giving thanks and singing praises for the love that calls us on from our many different places. We are gathered into one. We are gathered in our sorrow. We are gathered in our fear, in our pain and in our worry, in our anger and our tears, as we tend to one another with our gifts and with our care. Our community is strengthened through the faith and hope we share. We are gathered in commitment to a planet that is home. Works of justice, acts of kindness, bless the world and heal our souls. As our voices join together, may our song of peace resound. May we offer in abundance all the grace that we have found.
Thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where we will continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Nick Williams, a member of the worship committee, and I will be your worship associate today. Other members of the worship committee you will hear from include other members such as Tinka Friend reading the sermon, Alec Peck, our music coordinator, Adam Wedeking, who monitors our visual and online connections, and Kate Lewicki, who is in charge of our sound system. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and an open heart, and with muted electronic devices. We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. We hope you will find acceptance, connection, challenge, and love here. We hope you will find ways to provide outreach to others in our congregation, in our local community, and in our world community. Thank you for joining us today. Before we move into the service, there are a few announcements we would like to share. We'll mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave up a slide with all this information, and it is available on our website. Supper Club will meet next Saturday, July 15th at 1 p.m. at the Monarch Asian Bistro in Canyon Crest. Please contact Pat Kawunder if you wish to join the group so she can make reservations. And now I invite you to sit back, take a slow, deep breath, and move into our worship hour. You are welcome to read with me the mission statement of our church. Our mission is to foster a diverse religious community that celebrates life, affirms the individual, encourages spiritual growth and open thought, and works to advance social justice and environmental sustainability. The sermon you'll be hearing today was delivered by Reverend Melanie Morel Insminger at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Cherry Hill, Sunday, August 14th, 2005. The Reverend Melanie Morel Esminger is a retired UU minister. She was ordained in 1993 and served at several churches in Louisiana, New Jersey, Tennessee, Mississippi. She retired in 2015. She believes in intersectionality, is a music lover, and a proud mother and grandmother. Building bridges across diversity, political differences. So Tinka and I are both wearing some patriotic adornments. I'm the adornment. She's today we continue reading a four-part summer sermon series entitled Building Bridges Across Diversity. Last week, part one focused on different beliefs and spiritualities. This week, the second installment of the series, intended to help us as a congregation. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Second installment, political differences, a very timely topic in the diverse cultural climate that we live in today. This month's sermons are intended to help us as a congregation and as individuals to create a strong pluralistic community, to see our congregation diversity as a source of strength and power. Today's sermon examines what may be the most difficult diversity of all, political difference. We have two lightings of sacred flames. The first is the occupied Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Candle. The second is the lighting of our chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original people of this land who cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot we occupy was first the sacred space of several groups of Indigenous peoples, including the Cahuilla, the Copena, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as stewards of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Our chalice lighting. Today's reading for the chalice lighting is number 453 in the gray hymnal. May the lights we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. We have a tradition at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others, and so I will now ask for a volunteer from someone who has been here a while to tell us your name and how you found out about our church. Grace, did I see your hand move? Oh, please come up. Sorry. I was looking everything over and I overlooked you. We ask that you step close to the mic and speak into it directly and clearly so everyone can hear. However, be aware that you will be visible on our Zoom camera and in the recording of this service, which is posted online.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ariel. I was absent last week, but I was here the week before, and I am a relatively new member, but thank you all for having me.
Thank you. That's how it's done. If you're new here, a visitor, or an old friend, please raise your hand to stand and come up to the mic. If there is someone online who would like to introduce themselves, raise your hand and we will call on you by Zoom. Please let us know who you are, where you are from, and how you found out about us. Anyone, Adam? No? Okay. For any other new guests, please join us for socializing and coffee hour after the service. We'd love to chat with you out in the parish hall, where we can also find our visitors book. Please leave your name before you leave so that we know you were here, and leave your contact information if you want to know about upcoming events. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. We don't sell our list or share it with anyone else. Our hymn now is number 123, Spirit of Life, from the gray hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you. Please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing number 123, Spirit of Life.
Of compassion,
This portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. You may contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is shown here, as well as on the church website and in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we have in the church each Sunday. You get the full value, and the church also receives a percentage for free. Please see Dinah Rowe or Robert Braun in the church office if you are interested in purchasing gift cards. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity, and to those who give of their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. Will the ushers please now come forward to receive the collection? We will also be passing around a bag to collect any food or hygiene donations for those in need.
Our next hymn is number 402 from You I Receive from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you and stand in either body or spirit and join us in singing hymn 402 from You I Receive.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive,
Our meditation will be a little different this week. We're going to let a song. The song is Find a Stillness, a quiet meditative song. It will lead us into meditation. And then I will bring us out of meditation with a ring on the bowl. So you may stay seated at this time since it is going to be a meditation.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit.
Now, I would like to introduce Tinka Friend, reading part 2 of Building Bridges Across Diversity, Political Differences. The sermon you will be hearing this morning was taken from the worship web found on the website of the Unitarian Universalist Association.
Because there are probably, in fact, I know that there are people here who were not here last week. I'm just going to point a little something out before I start reading today's sermon. It's an explanation that I gave last week that I feel would be helpful to the people who are coming this morning and finding themselves in part 2, not having heard part 1. So I want to remind us that this sermon series was written in 2005, and at the General Assembly that year in Fort Worth, a report of the Commission on Appraisal of the Unitarian Universalist Association called Engaging Our Theological Diversity was released. So that was back in 2005 at the GA that year. The findings of that report is the basis for this sermon series. Since then, the UUA Commission on Appraisal has conducted and issued 3 more reports. 2013, the report was titled, "Who's in Charge Here? The Complex Relationship Between Minister and Authority." 2017, the title was Class Action: The Struggle with Class in Unitarian Universalism. And in 2021, it was Unlocking the Power of Covenant. And I also feel the need to remind us that since 2005, and in my opinion, certainly since 2015, in this nation, our country, our communities, our churches, and even our families have become even more divided. I don't think that there has been a sharper division or animosity between the 2 major political parties in my lifetime, the 2 parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. It seems as though there has become this greater sense of other, and not in a good way. Seeing the political other really as more of a demon, totally unredeemable, just written off, thoroughly incomprehensible. And I must say, I have seen that in both parties. So now let's see what our sermon says on this subject this morning. Again, it's Building Bridges Across Diversities, Political Differences, Summer Sermon Series, Part 2. This sermon series, entitled Building Bridges Across Diversities, is intended to help us as a congregation and as individuals to create a strong pluralistic community, to see our congregational diversity in terms of theology, life experience, and politics as a source of power and strength. Last Sunday, we looked at how we can be one congregation, even though we were made up of many different theological beliefs. Today's sermon examines what may be the most difficult diversity of all: political differences. To give you an example of the extent of the challenge, when I announced this sermon topic, parishioners had various reactions. "Good luck finding any UU Republicans," said one jocularly. "Is it possible to be a real UU and be a Republican? Doesn't it go against the UU principles?" sincerely asked another one. There's an old joke about a preacher who, when asked if he believed in baptism, replied, "Believe in it? Why, I've seen it done." I don't have to believe in the concept of UU Republicans. I've seen it done. The congregation I served in Tennessee had Republican members. The Worcester, Massachusetts UU congregation that Eric and I visited last year is majority Republican. And there are Republicans right here in the Cherry Hill congregation. In fact, I'm on rather intimate terms with a UU Republican since I happen to be married to one. It is also perfectly possible to be UU and Green, or UU and Independent, or UU and Socialist. I've seen it all done. As we know, Unitarian Universalism has no central dogma or doctrine to hold our religious community together. And therefore, many different religious beliefs and spiritual traditions are part of UU congregations, this one included. But while diversity is a positive core value for many UUs, diversity in itself is not enough to hold a religious community together. For drawing closer together, people seek commonality, not difference. And as the report from the Commission on Appraisal of the UUA has noted, our UU commonalities are subtle and easily missed or ignored. In far too many cases, Unitarian Universalists who would never stand for a creedal test of membership seek the unity they crave by imposing a political litmus test instead. I constantly tell newcomers, no matter what you hear, Unitarian Universalism is not the religious arm of the Democratic Party. Critics of Unitarian Universalism, both from within and from without, have pointed out this tendency as one of our movement's flaws. Certain religious conservatives have dismissed us as merely a social and political club and not a religion at all. On a regular basis, letters to the editors of the UU World magazine complain about a pervasive assumption in Unitarian Universalism that we are all Democrats. The Reverend Dr. Davison Lohr, minister of First Unitarian Church in Austin, Texas, goes so far as to refuse to even call himself a UU minister, saying that the term is bankrupt. In a provocative essay for this spring's issue of the Journal of Liberal Religion entitled Why Unitarian Universalism is Dying, he writes, "Politics replaced religion as the shared center of Unitarians and Universalists in the mid-20th century and remains their shared center today. If this is seldom mentioned, it may be because it's just too obvious." If you are one of those UUs who think it would be hard to hold a Unitarian Universalist religious beliefs and vote Republican, then you are unwittingly part of the problem. There is nothing in the UU principles that specifies a particular political party. Republicans, Democrats, Greens, Socialists, Independents can all agree with these principles. You do not have to be a political or even a social liberal to be a religious liberal. Although in some UU congregations, this would be hard to prove. In America today, what passes for political debate among the various camps often degenerates into insult and derision. Republicans are fascists. Democrats are traitors. Greens are naive. Independents can't make up their minds. It's worse when this ugliness happens within Unitarian Universalist congregations, because we are called by our first principle of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Also, our third principle of acceptance of one another. And our fifth principle of the democratic process. To act very differently, we must if we want to really follow our principles. There is no escape clause in the UU principles that says, the foregoing is null and void if someone disagrees with you politically. Our covenants with our life partners would never work if we pledged our fidelity, and that in that was a hidden trap door. I promise to be faithful to you unless I'm attracted to someone else. As a covenantal community, we have made promises to each other about valuing and accepting each other and abiding by the democratic process. These promises can only be meaningful if kept under challenging circumstances, as in those painful times when we disagree. Last week, I spoke about how the Commission on Appraisal had found in the interviews they conducted for the report that many, if not most, UUs were reluctant to talk about their religious beliefs in their congregations, fearing conflict and misunderstanding. It seems strange and ironic to me that to avoid controversy, UUs would steer clear of theology, but instead embrace politics. Not to mention that it lends credence to those critiques that we would rather be involved with politics than religion. I have said before that I come from a long line of Democrats. My father's father was a minor elected official in New Orleans after World War II. And my mother's Italian immigrant father in Woodbine, New Jersey, voted Democrat in every election since the granting of his citizenship. I myself have voted for a Republican exactly only twice in my life. So how did this dyed-in-the-wool congenital Democrat come to marry an equally committed Republican? The easy answer is that we love each other. The more complicated answer is that we know when to stop talking. We've accepted that it is impossible for one of us to convert the other, or at least we've just about accepted it. We rejoice that in all the world we have found each other, agreeing on so many important things, having so many commonalities, loving each other so much, and we've decided to forgive each other for having the wrong political opinions. We keep saying, if James Carvell and Mary Matlin can do it, so can we. And ideally, that's how we can do it in UU congregations as well when dealing with political differences. Emphasize our commonalities, forgive each other, and hold open, respectful conversations without name-calling or generalizations. For in the end, if a religious community dedicated to pluralism and diversity can't deal with political differences, what hope is there? Amen, Ashe, Shalom, Salam, Namaste, blessed be. Now, please allow me, Tinka, just a little short postscript. If I were to ask if there was anyone here who registers as a Republican, and believe me, I was really tempted to do that, or even votes occasionally for Republicans, So if I ask that question and no one raised their hand, would it be because no one here fits that category? Or would it be because no one here feels comfortable or secure admitting it for fear of being judged, thought less of, or gossiped about? And I hope that we, myself included, are mindful of what we say, or at least how we say it, when we come to speak at the mic, to speak of our pain or confusion, especially in political matters, and careful that we do not point our finger at the other in a derogatory way. What is said at the microphone is recorded and put online. I can see where I have said things or made ungracious comments against the other political party that I certainly would not say to that someone's face. I contend that it is the responsibility of this church, of each of us, to see that that doesn't happen, not here. That every person who walks into this building, whether sitting in these pews or not, feels from us that their inherent worth and dignity is affirmed, regardless of whether we agree with their positions or not, whether we even accept or understand their positions or not. I pray that that is the task of this loving and accepting faith that I love and that brings us together. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 95. There is More Love Somewhere, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, but please stand in either body or spirit and join us in singing There is More Love Somewhere.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Please be seated. And this is something I wrote as a benediction, and I would like for you to join with me. May I remember that we are all God's children, brothers and sisters all. So join me on that part. May I remember that we all have different views when looking at a problem, brothers and sisters all. May I remember that we all have different priorities, brothers and sisters all. May I remember that we all have different solutions, brothers and sisters all. May I remember that we all can be ruled by fear, brothers and sisters all. May I remember that we all have the capacity to love, brothers and sisters all. May I remember that we all have the capacity to forgive, brothers and sisters all. May I remember that we are all God's children, brothers and sisters all. Namaste, amen, and blessed be.
Thank you, Tinka, for sharing your valuable time and the reading with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again. Got a big fan out there. For those of you who would like to stay in the sanctuary for 10 to 15 minutes to share some discussion or observations from the service, please remain in the sanctuary or online. Please be aware that these comments will be posted online. For the rest of you, you are now welcome to adjourn to the parish hall. Would anyone like to come up and share their thoughts?
The microphone right here.
Step close to the microphone and speak clearly, please. Okay.
I would just like to ask if we would, sorry. I would just like to ask if we would like to ask Pete Buttigieg and his husband to drop their guard and to yuck it up with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan.
Given the administration that we've got on both sides, it becomes rather a spectacular task to try and build a bridge, which is what we're trying for. But I was trying just now when I was looking at some of this. I've always had trouble with about 5 and 6 seem to be my problem spots in this faith. I've been running into people along the way that I know pretty well that they were on much more conservative than I was. And I don't like being a robo-liberal. You know, let me be liberal because I am, not because I'm programmed and because I'm immersed in a congregation with you guys. So I sometimes look at things and say, if I were conservative, could I make this thing work? And I think, at least on, not on all of them, but on the majority of them, I could make it work. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Well, you know, you could, there's many evangelical groups that don't necessarily share the same idea of human worth, but there are plenty of conservatives on a secular level who are sitting here going, I don't want to waste anyone. I want to maximize every talent that we have. And as far as treating each other justly, it's like, I can't run a business if somebody's feeling picked on all the time, because you're just going to burn out, leave, and give a bad reputation for everything. And, you know, I've run into conservatives who I really think that the racism that they might have is on the back burner. But what they want to have is a large sum of money. And so that means when the people around them are saying, a little dental care over here, you know, we're hurting over here. They're saying, no, I want to save the money for a bigger emergency, which basically hurts your feelings very badly if you're the person with the pain. But I feel like some of this stuff could actually reach them in the sense of both sides of the aisle tend to say, we have science, we have the core of how reality works. And that means science, and that means that you're looking for a bubble of reality that reaches for several light years because you're trying to make a buck in those several light years. And if you can sell them on the idea that roughly that we do better when we're not techno peasants, that we are better for the company and that the company is a happier place, I think it's reachable. I don't always feel like that, and I certainly have had my optimism crunched all to heck sometimes. But I do think that the bridge is possible. I think that some of the people across the aisles from us, at least when the cameras aren't on them, that they're not quite the robots that we might play them as, and that we can build a bridge here and there. I'm not completely optimistic, but I am not going to start my Sunday with despair. And I'm going to operate from a position of hope, even though I realize this is probably going to take some overtime and I'd have to have the lifetime of one of Tolkien's elves if I want to see the end of it. But I think it's doable.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else have anything?
Thank you, Tinka, for delivering that very timely sermon. I have two quotes today. One, never discuss politics or religion in mixed company. Good philosophy. Number two, John F. Kennedy in 1961. Let us remember on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. Let both sides explore what problems unite us instead of belaboring those problems which divide us.
Thank you. Are you going to say?
An independent comment from myself. I thought this sermon was a very insightful and instructive in a number of ways. I like getting a sense of direction from a sermon when I come in here. And I think the comments about how to get along in your relationship were very, very good, very clear and short, which is what men need to be told. Something short and quick and repeated often. So I like this series, and more than that, we're coming in on time today instead of going sudden death overtime.
And anyone else want to share?
Yeah, thank you. I like this sermon because it talks a lot about relationships. Now, this year, I'm working towards a degree towards business, and business teaches you to network with people.
Mm-hmm.
But how can you do that when you have a lot that you bring to the table, but you don't know how to really make the time or space or even the acceptance for anybody else at the table, right?
Mhm.
Now, I like your guys' example about your relationship, husband and wife. I myself am married, and I was raised Christian while my husband was raised Catholic. We are not that now, but we found a way to meet each other. He's from Texas, actually, and I've stayed in California my whole life. So definitely had to bridge that gap to get him over here. But because of that, we've allowed that acceptance instead of the intellect. Because let's all agree that it takes a bit of intelligence to understand politics. And if you're like me from a younger generation, you're kind of just thrown into the politics that are already there. You're still finding your way on how you fit into that. But intelligence with the topic in mind, there's also a thing called emotional intelligence. That's an entirely different series, but it takes that much too, just to connect with your fellow man. That's all I got to say about that.
Thank you. Okay, before you come up, Bill, I want to share that many of you know that there's a few of us here that have been studying the Course of Miracles at this church for over 20, going on 25 years. And what I have really learned from the Course of Miracles that has helped me tremendously in all of these types of situations is to remember that each individual person either comes from a place of love or a place of fear. So I don't believe that people come from a place of hate. I believe they're coming from a place of fear. And it may be the fear of unknown. It may be the fear of losing their job. It may be the fear that they might be considered irrelevant. It may be the fear, especially in terms of like white supremacy. It may be the fear that something that benefit, a specialty that they had that will be taken away from them, that they will no longer have. It will be given to somebody else. If I just can keep in my head, if I can, when I look at a conflict, if I can find what that fear is, if I can identify for me what I think that fear is of that person, I can find compassion for that person. And I'm a retired special needs teacher, and I can tell you that when I dealt with my children in many, many ways, they had a great deal of fear, especially handicapped kids. And they behaved in horribly ways sometimes, horrible. But it was all because, it was not because they were bad kids. It was not, it was because of the fear that they had, the fear that they couldn't keep up, the fear that the kids would tease them, the fear that they would never learn, and so that's what I try to do. I try to find, if I can, to imagine what it is this person or group of people are fearing. And then I try to reach into that place to find compassion for them, just as I would find compassion for the small handicapped children I taught. So that's my sharing. Okay, Bill?
Small build off of what you were saying. When Matthew Query was here, we had he was a past minister of ours. He had a thing called, there was a thing that the GA was pushing called living from abundance. Mm-hmm. And to be a conservative sometimes is the fear that you're going to run out of fresh air, common sense, political power, an advantage that you were using to feed yourself, and it's like going off of EBT when you're not ready to go. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you look at the biblical God, you're out of energy most of the time. I mean, the sands are hot in the desert, but you're out of energy because your energy is coming from the water. if you miss your oasis, you're going to die. So scarcity is the big consuming fear of all the people of the book, that you make a mistake and it's going to kill you. But when we look at God now, we're sort of looking at him from more of a physics thing. The idea of every molecule in my body, in the pews, in the air about me, all the spaces between electrons are all shimmering with the potential power of God. If you're going to be deist about the thing, and if not potential energy, that might as well do some fit into my wallet or yours than anyone else's. Either way, if we convince our nervous comrades that there's energy enough to do a good job, I think that will help build a bridge right there.
Thank you. Adam, is there anyone online? No? Okay, are there any other comments?
We don't, sorry. We don't want to forget that what we saw in the past, when Birmingham was actually called Bombingham, when we saw children being sprayed by adults with fire hoses that made them roll in the street, and when the dogs were turned loose on them and they were bitten and chewed, that could come back. If you see how trans are being treated now, that same anger that was back there in the 60s is now being thrown full force on trans and is going to be turned on to LGBTQ. It already has started, but it could come back. You don't want to forget that the past could very well come back, especially if Trump is elected. I believe it will be the end of our democracy. It'll still be called a democracy. He'll just be in there for life, like Xi or like Putin.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I just want to say before we close that this was good for me. And it, like I said, I need to keep in my mind a bridge of compassion. And that's what I need to make sure that on my end. And I can only be responsible for my half of the bridge. I have to remember that too. I'm not responsible for the other half of the bridge. This is like the bridge coming together. So I'm responsible for the bridge. I'm not responsible for them walking, over to meet me. So I just need to be aware when I have those kinds of feelings and that wall goes up immediately. I know for me, I need to find that compassion inside of me. So did you have a comment?
Not sure what it's going to be, but I've been in the Los Angeles, what my comment's going to be, but I'll start it and see where it goes. Been a member of the Unitarian Church since about 1980, Los Angeles. And the office manager was Unitarian for a long time. She's also in the medical community. I've never had the courage to talk about the fact that I was cured of cancer with carrot juice in 2005. And there's a book written about, and that said something about the attitude that Democrats can have. I'm a Democrat, I'm also a Green. I ran for school board in LA. I ran for Congress in Dan Lincoln's, I forget the name of the candidate. But I've never had the courage to go against the medical establishment in my church and talk to people about discovering carrot juice and watching my tumor shrink when I drank it and grow when I didn't. It was back and forth until I became convinced that there was control there. I have a blog. It has 970,000 page views, and yet I've never talked about carrot juice in my church. My blog has helped thousands of people recover from cancer, and I have to watch them die in my church. I think church is a place where we need to have different views. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, if there are no further comments, I want to thank everyone who shared their thoughts. And please now join us in the parish hall for further fellowship.